Okadi here. Today we're going to be going over our Cyclone Slayer. This build I made because of Mage Fist. He recently sidelined his Flicker Strike Slayer and started up a reverse chill witch Cyclone build. And that kind of inspired me to go ahead and get a reverse chill going on the Slayer as well, because as he said, Slayer does more damage. And in my opinion, Slayer is king. So here is our Slayer build. Desecrate, Blood Rage. Oh, get him. The damage is good. Like, we're just melting Trinity. No. So crit, proj, extra as, damage, chaos, lesser. It's a really rippy map, but we'll look at both ways we can play this build. It'll be big AoE and zoomies. First, we got big AoE. Big AoE is quick relative to normal Cyclone, but not quite as zippy. The damage is solid though, and the clear is great. Hello, Mr. Harbinger. I'll just sit right here. How you doing, sir? Keep them coming. No, no fracturing fragments. Option number one to play is super fast, or super big. Option number two is super fast. Pick your flavor. No, we missed some guys. Survivability is phenomenal. The recovery from 30 attacks per second on a Cyclone is so strong.
You stay in the ground. You stand at the crossroads. Choose wisely. Your valor is his true measure.
And single target. Very nice. You do need to put down a Desecrate whenever there's a boss that doesn't have ads, so that you can summon your little General Cry guys. We're not a General's Cry build, but damage is damage. Deleted. Alright, now that we got to look at the mapping, let's go over the POB on this character. We're going to start off with our passive tree. This should be like the standard heat map for every Slayer in the world. We're not going to spend a lot of time going over this. I do want to note we do take some of these AoE nodes down here, all of this range on sword mastery and range on attack mastery. If you're struggling for damage or you're struggling for survivability, you can give up both of these nodes here in order to acquire life or additional damage on the tree. Neither of these scale damage very good. These are just quality of life nodes right here. Again, we do have shield mastery with Testudo and block mastery with deflection. We are maintaining our endurance charges primarily through deflection and Disciple of Unyielding. And then you would need to do a shield swap red banner blade for enduring charges on bosses if you were concerned about getting smashed by the boss with your endurance charges not down. Outside of that, everything here is pretty standard. We're running 1 Rune Graft of Treachery here for 15% increased reservation efficiency of skills. And we're taking plenty of spell suppression on the tree so that we are spell suppression capped. If you are not spell suppression capped, you can take more nodes on the tree right here to get access to spell suppression. We go down this tree as well for the additional move speed because we do like the zoomies. We're running 142% while cycloning. So very, very fast. Now, as far as skills go, we are running Assassin's Mark with Mark on Hit, Flame Dash for movement, Blood Rage, and Vol Smite with more duration. Skitterbots with Unbound Elements and Bone Chill. Punishment as a secondary curse because we are running a Doriani's Merc. Tempest Shield with Enlighten and Flesh and Stone. And a Desecrate so that we have corpses available for bosses. We're running Cyclone with increased crit damage, Fortify, Awaken LA damage with attacks and volatility, as well as Infused Channeling. If you want larger AoE while mapping, Awakened, increased area of effect. Awakened, increased area of effect is a great secondary choice as opposed to running Infused Channeling. But Infused Channeling gives you more damage and more tankiness. We are running an Auto Exertion, General Cries, Blade Flurry with volatility here. I'll show you this to explain to you this is not the DPS of the General Cries guys. They don't do this much damage. They do 362 million DPS divided by 14.34 divided by the cooldown on your General's Cry, which mine is 2.079. 2.079. 362 million divided by 14.34 divided by 2.079. 12 million DPS. So these guys crank out 12 million DPS. They do 24 million DPS in burst. It's not a lot of damage, but it is enough damage to justify giving them a link and giving them some support. So they are good. But just don't get misled by this bullshit number that's not reality. Items. We're running a foil that is lightning crit based with hits can't be evaded. We're running a shield with recover life on block, life and increased block chance as well as suppress spell damage. We're running a helmet with suppression, life and resistances. We're running body armor. This is Cyclone body armor. We'll talk about crafting at the end of this. But this is a socketed attacks, have less mana cost, ignore stuns, crit chance, and you can apply an additional curse. We are running Temple Gloves with attack speed, life, and additional resistances on them. We are running Boots with life, resistances, and armor and evasion on them. We're running a Yoke of Suffering with Disciple of Unyielding Anointed on it. Make sure you get a 10% increased damage for each type of ailment. That's the most important stat on the Yoke. We are running a Taming, get a 48% Taming. It's worth it. We are running a Winter Weave for reverse chill. So one of the main ways that we get massive amounts of move speed and massive amounts of attack speed is by reversing chill. And Winter Weave is what allows us to do that. So this is a base requirement for the build. It also happens to have both fire and cold damage to attacks, resolving our need for flat fire and flat cold in order to both brittle and scorch our targets with our Secrets of Suffering. And we are running an Archon's Tools. Archon's Tools is how we are chilling ourselves. You have several ways to chill yourself, and we'll go over them real quick and let you know why I chose Archon's Tools. Archon's Tools allow us to do a 29% chill all of the time when our skitterbots are around us. This is a tremendous amount of action speed, attack speed, move speed, very important to the build. The other ways that you can self-chill are Fulcrum, which forces you to use a staff, which is a bad weapon. And it forces you to use a bad staff as your weapon on an attack build. It has a few other little perks on it, but it's just not superior to a sword and board setup, in my opinion, by any stretch of the word. So we nixed on Fulcrum. You've got Ice Fang and Venopuncture. Both force you to sacrifice more utility to bleed or poison yourself. And then you're stuck with a base chill instead of a 30% chill, so much less action speed. You've got the Call of the Void, which makes you wait for other things to hit you before you can get the chill. So basically, like, you suck until stuff hits you, and then you're good, and then you kill everything, but then everything is dead, and then you suck again. And so you're just not getting that consistent chill duration without further scaling into debuff duration. And so there's a few other ways to chill. But at the end of the day, I think Archons is really the best because you get chill when there's no targets around. You get chill that doesn't require you to be hit, and you get chill without sacrificing your weapon slot on an attack build. So I think this is a really, really good option given our options for self-chilling. Tinctures, we are running an attack speed tincture. This build scales damage really, really well with attack speed because of the multipliers that are inherent to Cyclone. Quicksilver Flask, Diamond Flask, an Oriath's End for clear explosions, or instead of an Oriath's End, you can have a Granite Flask here for tankiness, and a Silver Flask for attack speed, move speed. Or attack speed. Yeah, attack speed, move speed. We have a Jewel here for Corrupted Blood cannot be inflicted and some useful stuff on it. We have another Jewel here for Int, because we do need a little bit of Int from a Jewel in order to get everything rolling again, unless you want to craft your gear differently. And we have a large cluster jewel that is Calamitous, Fuel the Fight, or Feed the Fury with martial prowess. Feed the Fury is technically more damage. Fuel the Fight is just what I had laying around. I would get a Feed the Fury one. Small cluster jewel interrogation allocates Secrets of Suffering for us, which allows us to Brittle Sap and Scorch. A Lethal Pride with a search built into the system here. You want Rage on hit, you want Melee on hit, and then you have all of your sorting in here. We do need to get Strength out of our Lethal Pride, so make sure you are looking at one that has at least 2 nodes of Strength on it, or 1 node of Strength and 1% Strength on it. You do need to make sure that you get Strength on the build, otherwise, again, you'll have to reallocate either your gear or your items to get more Strength. And finally, we are running a Light of Meaning with Chaos Res on it to make sure that our Chaos Res is capped. And that is how we're going to get all of our gear set up here. We're going to go talk about our configurations page. And our configurations page is set up as such. Power charges from Assassin's Mark, Frenzy charges from Mark Mastery, Endurance charges from Disciple of Unyielding, and Endurance charge on Block, Fortify from Skill Link on Cyclone, Rage from Lethal Pride. We're leeching because we're a Slayer. We are chilled. You don't actually have to check that. It chills you anyway. We're channeling Cyclone, we're using Infusion, we're sitting in Sand Stance. Enemy is low life. This is a modifier anytime you're using a Punishment Curse, and I'll explain this real quick because it confuses some people. Punishment Curse is 60% more damage when the target is below half health. That's 30% more damage, because low life checkmark spreads out that 60% over the course of the fight, simulating that on average you're gaining 30 million DPS via punishment. Hence, punishment really good. The enemy is bleeding because we have bleed on the tree. The enemy is poisoned because we have poison on the tree. The enemy is blinded because we have tattoos on the tree. This is a lie and a manipulation. Sorry about that. The enemy is not ignited. We have no way to put out an ignite. But we do a scorch. We do a significant brittle. We do shock, but the shock comes from the skitterbots, and so we don't have to put that in there. And technically the Scorch comes from the Skitterbots as well, so technically we don't have Scorch tagged in there, it's not necessary. And then we're sapping for a huge sap, and then we're brittling for a good brittle, and then we're intimidating through our Lethal Pride. This is against a Guardian Pinnacle boss, and so that puts our DPS at about 142 million as it sits right now. Our Mercenary. I have a video on Mercenaries, I'll include it below. We are using a standard Fallen Reverend, Wrath, B-Mage Cry Mercenary. We're going to equip him with a Perkle's Toe for your damage with hits is lucky. We're going to get negative 200 lightning res on him with a Doriani's. We're going to run a Wrath Aura with Wrath Scepters, 80% increased effect of our Wrath, giving us additional damage to Wrath. And then we're going to run Calling Strike on his gloves because we are not calling any longer. On our Ascendancy here, we are taking Impact as opposed to the traditional Headsman. Impact gives us a tremendous benefit to Cyclone via large AoE and AoE scaling, and close on the screen is their damage by proximity is very good. I mean, even with a big Cyclone, we're going to be dealing a significantly large amount of damage with damage dealt based on proximity here. Outside of that, Masterful Form, obviously Brutal Fervor, and finally Bane of Legends. Now let's talk about crafting. So there's only a few items that are difficult to craft on this build. Now this is a standard craft. There's nothing new here. We've been crafting body armors for Cyclone builds since Cyclone has been Cyclone. We're running a strength dex build, so you're going to be using conquest lamellars. First thing you're going to do is you're going to either create or buy a warlords. And then you're going to go over to your harvest bench and you're going to reroll attack. Reforge attack on it until you have a tier 1 socketed attacks and a second warlords mod. So we got a warlord mod there. We have a tier 1 here, but still no other warlords. This is cheap. These are like 75 juice per hit. And so you're just going to keep doing this until you have a socketed tier 1 and another warlords mod on there. Everyone in there. This thing is being stubborn. There we go. Warlord mod and socketed warlord. Now the next thing you're going to do is you're going to grab an orb of dominance and you're going to slam an orb of dominance trying to elevate this socket. Now if you are making a budget version of this armor and you do not want to buy orbs of dominance, you're done. Well, you would actually not roll this mod on there. So you would only roll T1 warlord with no other warlords mod. But if we're elevating it, we're going to hit it with an orb and elevate it to negative 20 total mana cost and ignore stuns while using socketed attack skills. Now, if you're building this budget, I still recommend that you get the elevated warlord and skip on the elevated hunter. But we take this armor and then we do the exact same thing to a hunter armor. And we'll restart this. And so you do the exact same thing to a hunter armor. Now, your warlord's armor can be any eye level 85 base in the game. It doesn't matter what it is. We're going to sacrifice it and dump it into our hunter armor. Now, our hunter armor, we want to try to get a high quality, if you can afford one, conquest lamellar. And then again, we need to hunter orb this. Or if you can find a high quality conquest lamellar that's already huntered, you can use that one. We're going to do a similar thing here and reroll attacks. And we're looking for T1 crit. Now you can hit T2 crit on here. And so you want a T1 crit if you're elevating it plus another hunter mod. So again, you'll just keep re-rolling this until you see this plus another hunter mod. Now we got hunter mod here, T1 crit here. Same thing, if you want to orbit, and we get the elevated attacks crit. Now there's a 50-50 chance that it chooses the other mod. If it chooses the other mod, you just re-harvest over it again until you get them again. And then you orbit again. And if it eats it again, you roll and you orbit again. I missed like 6 on my first craft. It happens. It's just a 50-50 shot. Now you take this armor and you go grab your other warlord's armor and you awakener's orb. And we don't have the item in here, but you awakener's orb your warlord armor into this armor. When you awakener's orb your warlord armor into this armor, you now have a hunter and a warlord's piece, and you'll have a mod down here that will be your, this is an eye level 84 item. I don't think there's a way to redo this. Whenever you're creating the items, it doesn't matter. It'll change the eye level to the appropriate eye level, but in here, eye level 100. We're going to go and make the item over here real quick so we can copy it over. So body armor, strength and dex. influences. So when you awaken or orb them together, you're going to get a hunter and a warlord body armor. And your body armor will likely look like this. It'll have some random modifiers on it, preferably an open prefix. It can fill prefixes. If it does, then that's just your armor and you have to live with it. But if it doesn't fill prefixes, then you have an armor that is going to have your socketed attacks at an elevation and your hunter attack crits with an elevation. And so it'll look something like this. Once you get to this point, you'll go suffixes cannot be changed. And then go over to your harvest bench and reforge caster. Harvest bench reforge caster can only return additional curse. So you'll probably have an armor that looks like this with some suffix on it that you got that you don't have a lot of control over. Your warlord, your hunter, and your hunter curse. If you got an additional prefix on here, then just benchcraft on hybrid armor or whatever else you would like to see on here. If you did not get an additional prefix on here, you can exalted orb this, win the game with T1 life, and then come over here and benchcraft on whatever you would like. I typically choose to benchcraft on to my armors the hybrid armor and evasion percentages. Which are not going to show up under bench crafting here because we're in suffixes. Increased armor and evasion, but the bench crafted version of this. Increased armor and evasion and done. And then you'll get this armor. And this, of course, is the armor that we have on the character that we have in the spreadsheet there. So the craft is not complicated. You're going to harvest, reforge, dominance, harvest, reforge, dominance, awaken them together. Suffixes cannot be changed. And then reforge caster, get additional curse, and then exalt if you need to. If you don't need to, then just benchcraft on whatever you would like to have on there. There is the chance that your armor fills prefixes. If it fills prefixes and you have an open suffix, then you can beastcraft prefix to suffix and save the item. And then you can suffixes cannot be changed, and then reforge caster, and then exalt, and then benchcraft. If it does not have an open prefix or open suffix, but if everything is filled, it's just a YOLO slam. You got like a 4 out of 6 chance of ripping something off that will allow you to move on with the craft. If it rips off the suffix that you don't want, then you can beastcraft prefixes to suffixes, and then you can go through with the craft there. If it rips off a prefix, then you can go ahead and craft suffixes cannot be changed and reforge there. So not a terribly complicated craft, but a little bit of a complicated craft for newer players. Outside of that, the last craft that is left over is temple gloves, and my recommendation is that you fracture your temple gloves. Tuna has a video on how to safely fracture items. It's an expensive craft, so be prepared to spend a little bit of currency on it. But you can safely fracture a temple mod onto your gloves. I will say that gloves temple mods can be harvest reforged. And so we'll show you in game real quick here. If you have a pair of temple gloves that have a mod on them, but it's not the one you want, you can harvest reforge resistances. And if you harvest reforge cold to fire, this will become a fire res and a fire temple mod, which means when you are buying bases to fracture, you can buy a fire temple mod, which is increased or added damage against burning enemies, or a lightning temple mod, which is increased crit against shocked enemies. And then you buy that and you can change it over to damage with hits against chilled enemies. You can also constantly swap back and forth between cold and fire and cold and lightning and cold and fire and cold and lightning until you get a good roll on your increased damage with hits against chilled enemies. If you're going to fracture it, just spend the money and get 50%. It's worth it because in the end, you'll have a very valuable item that you can then resell. Another thing you can do, which is what I did with these gloves, is search for temple modded gloves that have a temple mod and increased attack speed and potentially a good suffix, and then just prefix craft on the gloves. Prefix crafting on the gloves is very simple. You have, these gloves right here that you had purchased. You come over to your PO or your Craft of Exile here. And we just Eldritch Craft on these. Or you can Eldritch Annul them and you can suffixes cannot be changed, Reforge Life. You have a million options on how to craft these, but you just prefix craft these gloves if you've got the increased attack speed and you've got the temple mod and you just want to get good mods on these. And so I bought these and I Eldritch Annulled off the front of the gloves. I suffixes cannot be changed. Reroll life for life. I got this T6 mod as well, and I just bench crafted on increased damage on leeching and made a really good pair of gloves for a fairly cheap amount of money. And so that's another option that you have for getting those gloves put together. Now the rest of the crafting is pretty straightforward. The helmet, just find a fractured helmet with fractured spell suppression and then hit it with chaos until you hit fire res, and then suffixes cannot be changed, reforge life. Your boots, ideally fractured move speed and then elemental essence into it until you have good resistances, and then suffixes cannot be changed, reforge life. Although you could probably just get move speed fractured boots and then life essence spam them to death until you get good resistances. You can get good resistances that way as well. The boots have a lot of really simple crafting options as far as the route you can go through on that. Everything else in the build is pretty straightforward though. If you have any questions over anything, please drop a comment down below. Come by Twitch, come by YouTube. I'm happy to help. One of my favorite things to do is to go through and help people fix their builds, as I'm sure you've seen in some of my other videos. And so if you do want to, come on by and we'll go over everything and get you taken care of. Thank you very much for watching. Peace.